Hello, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 64. This is the great speaker series. My name is Jay Oza, and I'm honored to have Tricia Brouk on the show today. A little bit about Tricia. Tricia started out as a dancer, then she moved into choreography, then as a director, writer. She then moved into, she has produced her own shows, and then she even produced a TEDxLincolnSquare. And underlying that is her philosophy of life, which is biased towards saying yes. And once you say yes, who knows what that may lead to. And we'll find out more about her philosophy of life. And as a result, this has really enriched her both, personally and professionally, as she's had opportunity to work with some of the biggest names in show business, the late great James Gandolfini, Suzanne Sarandon, Kate Winslet, and she even choreographed a movie by this great actor John Turturro, Romance and Cigarettes. So, and now I guess she can add to her list of somebody she has said yes to is me. So, Tricia, welcome to the show, and please fill in anything that I may have glossed over your background, because you have such a vast, background in what you have done.
Thank you so much first for having me, Jay. It's a real honor to be here, and I'm super excited to have this conversation with you today about public speaking and what that means. The intro was pretty comprehensive. I was a dancer, became a choreographer, director, writer. Now I'm a producer. I use and apply my expertise in the world of film, television, and theater to the art form of public speaking. So it was a really natural and organic transition for me to go from working with actors to public speakers. And I still do both. And for me, it's very much the same thing. I try to get actors and speakers to get out of their own way and to speak the truth about the message that they're sharing.
Excellent, excellent. So, Tricia, one of the things that I mentioned, and it's something that I picked up doing some research on you and also talking to you, is this whole thing on how you take on these different challenges, and some of them that come in your way by just saying yes. Can you speak more about that? Because I like that philosophy, because a lot of times you always hear people, advising, just say no, just say no. And, you've done a lot, and you can easily say no to a lot of things, but that's not what you do. You say yes. And that has led to so many opportunities. Can you speak about that and how that has led to your focusing on public speaking in particular?
Sure. Well, when you're in a life of show business, every day is a challenge. You wake up and you are challenged with booking a job or meeting the right person or finishing a script or coming in under budget when you're raising money. So I live my life very much, let's try it. We might fail, but we can get back up and it's not a big deal. So I do say yes in terms of challenging myself and giving myself opportunities that I may not have thought were something that would be interesting to me or that I never even considered. And that is a perfect example of the big talk. Over a year ago, Petra Kolber, who's an incredible public speaker and writer and advocate for happiness, she approached me to direct her TEDx Syracuse. And she'd been a fan of my work. She'd come to see my shows that I've written and directed. So she approached me to direct this TEDx. And I thought, sure, absolutely. Yes, it's probably just like any other one-woman show. And what was different about it was that, unlike actors, speakers want to share an important message, and it's all about the audience. I love actors, but it's all about them. When a speaker comes to me and they share the message that they want to take to a bigger stage, I get to help them articulate it, write it in a way that their voice is being heard through their point of view. And I get to help them deliver this big talk in a way that can be heard and accepted and taken in by the audience. So saying yes to Petra Kolber was a complete transformation for me, because I was able to see the world now through these amazing speakers. And it's a gift for me, because if I'm in the room with them and they're talking to me and sharing their message, and I'm giving them direction on what their message is, I get to spend time with these incredible speakers, and I get to have their message wash over me over and over again. And it's a true gift. And had I not said yes to Petra, I would not have become a TEDx organizer. I would not have met all the speakers that I've met on the Big Talk, my podcast. I wouldn't be talking to you right now. So if you can consider that one yes has branched out into an entire new world for me, it's kind of awesome and amazing.
Yeah, Tricia, you just said a word that I want you to kind of talk a little bit more about, is the word gift, because you approach things with that gift mindset. And a lot of people don't, because they always look at it from like, what's in it for me? And you're kind of just the opposite. Hey, I got an opportunity to say yes, I'm going to give this as a gift. And then whatever may result from that is just, that's great. But my initial approach is to provide a gift. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I like that idea, because that's an approach, means that you're not worried about rejection or the outcome. You're just focused on that. This is what I control. I can control the gifting part. What happens after that, I have no control over.
That's a really good point, Jay. If I can provide a service or gift my attention to someone without having any expectations in return, it always turns out to be beneficial for both of us. And it's sort of like when I used to go to auditions as a performer, I would go into the room and I would give them what I had to offer, knowing that that was my best. And whether they were buying it or not had nothing to do with me. I gave my best always. I gifted them my talent. And I always walked out of that room feeling great, even if I didn't book the job. So I tell my speakers it's the same thing. When you're preparing a new talk, it should be a gift, not an ask. You want to offer this information up to your audience without expecting anything in return, and you certainly don't want to pitch your business. So I think of every opportunity that comes my way as a gift, and I try to often be very giving to the people that I come in contact with. And I think that is why my experience with my clients and my speakers has been so intimate and so life-changing for both of us. Because just like with my actors, I go into a room and I get my actors and my speakers to get naked, to get ugly, to get vulnerable. And in order for them to do that, I have to be very, very caring. I have to give them a safe environment. And that's all coming from the gift. I give them the gift of myself, my time. And what they give back to me is far more than I ever give to them.
And another thing, the last point on this is, it tends to remove that scary word rejection when you are giving a gift. Is that correct?
I think it does. Yeah, absolutely. If you're walking in saying, here's what I have to offer you, thank you very much. You're not saying, please hire me, I'm the best one for the job. So there's no attachment, there's no resistance. It's all about just, here it is, and then I can move on to the next thing. And I've spent years being rejected from job to job to job. It's something that we as people in show business deal with all the time. So if you can get onto the stage, step onto the stage, and trust that your audience is there to receive your gift, you will win every time.
Right, excellent. I want to switch gears here and move to the gift that you gave with organizing the TEDx Lincoln Square event. Can you talk about why did you decide to organize this event, and what did you learn from it? Because when I listened to the episode number 81 of your podcast, The Big Talk, with your co-producer, J.B. Broderick, and there's a lot involved in putting that event together. So my question is, a lot of people out there who may not be familiar with, they all see these excellent TEDx talks, but they don't get to know what it takes to put on this event. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like why and what was that like, and what did you learn from that experience, and would you do it again?
Well, we are doing it again. Our next event happens on March 27th. So I was working with several speakers who had taken a TEDx off of their bucket list and put it onto their to-do list. And I realized that if I became an organizer, I could potentially give them a platform to do their TEDx. So I applied through TED and TEDx, and it was a 3-month application process. And they're very supportive. They really want you to get it right. They really want you to become an organizer, but they're very specific in how to do that. And you have to answer the questions the right way. You have to choose a name that is not A, been taken, and that is B, community-based in the location of where you're planning to do the event. So I went through this process, and right before November, I received the email that I was given my license to be a TEDx organizer. And it was so awesome because now I have this huge responsibility, A, to my speakers, but B, to the TEDx organization. Now I know how to produce theater. I know how to put on a show. I know how to entertain people. I knew all of that. I had my theater. So the next thing I needed was help. So I reached out to Jamie Broderick, and she became my co-organizer, and she's also the director of marketing. And together we sort of figured it out as we were going along. We made a website. We opened up the application process to speakers. We made a lot of mistakes along the way. I was emailing back and forth with the TED organization, the TEDx organization every day almost, and they were helpful and they were teaching me, and I was learning and I was making mistakes and I was fixing my mistakes. And it was such an incredible experience. There's a lot of rules that you must follow because the TEDx brand and the TED brand is very specific, and they want to maintain a level of integrity, and they want to maintain the highest level of performance quality. So the videos have to look a certain way. You have to mic them, you have to light them, and I know how to do all of that. What I didn't know was how many people would apply who didn't know what a TEDx talk is. Keynotes, lectures, those are very different than a TED or a TEDx. So I opened up the application process, and we received, and this was our first time ever, and we did zero marketing. We got over 65 applications. That doesn't sound like a lot, but I was only accepting 10 speakers. So Jamie went to Facebook groups and social media, and that's how we got the word out. And we had a lot of people apply who pitched me their businesses or their books. So one of the things that I learned was that people need to do their research, watch a TEDx, go onto the TED website, become familiar with what a TEDx and a TED Talk looks like and sounds like, because there's a lot of organizers out there who want to give you the stage, but you have to really be clear on what kind of a talk that is before you apply.
Yeah. So Tricia, I mean, to put an event like TEDx Lincoln Square, what are some of the skills that you had to bring together to have this type of success? Because I mean, it's not just like, hey, I cannot just go out and say, I want to do a TEDx event. You already have certain skills like directing and writing and all that. But what other skills that you also had to learn that, people like myself and others who are listening to don't know? Like, this is like your startup essentially. When you put an event like that together, it's almost like an exercise in starting your own company where you have an idea, but the idea can only go so far. You need so many other skills that you got to learn fast or bring in the right talent in order to put an event together. So what are the skills that you would say that you already possessed and the skills that you had to learn kind of on the fly to have a successful event like this?
I love this question, Jay. So I already knew I could write the script. I could hire a stage manager. I knew how to light the show. I knew how to hire the right videographer. and crew in order to make the technical part of the event look and sound great. I had a sound engineer. I knew who those people were because they're in my pocket. They're the people that I reach out to when I do any show. What I didn't know how to do was live stream. What I didn't know how to do was how often to communicate to the speakers. What I knew I could do was give them deadlines. I needed an outline by this date. I needed a partial video by this date. I needed you to RSVP by this date. I also did not know how to collect money from the Eventbrite site. So that's where my co-producer came in. She handled all of the ticket sales. So I was creative and she was business. And that was the perfect collaboration for us. Now, what I learned by communicating with all of my speakers is that nobody meets a deadline and very few people actually read the emails that I send them. So that's something that I'm going to have to be more vigilant about in 2018. Send fewer emails and expect and require a response email, confirmation that you've read this and that you've received it. So that was something that I learned. And we got a lot of great feedback from our speakers. We asked them what worked and what didn't so we can make improvements this year. We did the same thing with our audience so that we can make the event better for the audience next year. So I think what I did do was hire the right people. I brought in people who knew how to run the cables so that we could live stream. And I got us in there and we had 2 test days. So as a producer, I know that you need the time to test and hire the right people. That is always what you, oh, and there's one other thing. Hire somebody to proofread. We had typos until the last minute. And my brain at that point was completely exploding. So hire people, get volunteers to help, but make sure you have a team in place that can do what you can't do. Because as the director and as the executive producer of the event, I'm with the speakers, I'm in the theater. So everything that's happening behind the scenes, like printing the programs, stuffing the gift bags, that's all the volunteer team. So get your volunteers in place, make sure you've got a good crew who can light and video and deal with live stream, and ask TED. They have tons of resources. TEDx answered my emails the same, if not the next day, all the time. So it's a great organization. I highly recommend anybody becoming a TEDx organizer and getting your license. It's incredibly rewarding.
So you're a pro now at putting on a big event like this. One last before we move on to the big talk. You're an executive role here, so that means one of the key aspects of being an executive is bringing on putting together that team that works well together and who are highly motivated, and then there's a purpose behind it. As an executive, how did you make that happen?
I have a tribe that I often work with my shows, and I deeply respect them, and I always treat them like they are the most important person on my team, no matter what they're doing, no matter if they're getting lunch or if they are assistant directing. I bring these people together every time because they always show up for me over 100%. They are kind, they are smart, they are hardworking. So I would say once you get your tribe together, treat them with respect and they will always show up for you 110%.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to switch gears again and move to the podcast that you do, The Big Talk. And you've now done over 80 episodes. I think the last count I had is 83. And you've spoken to outstanding speakers. What are some of the things that you have learned about public speaking, interviewing some of these outstanding speakers, as well as many TEDx speakers who gave speeches at the TEDx Lincoln Square? What did they learn from it, and that myself and the audience listening to it can learn from what you have gathered from doing this podcast now for several years?
The biggest thing that I learned from interviewing people who talk for a living is that the speech and the message has to be about the audience. You have to give them what they want. So if you have an idea that you think is all fancy and you want to share that with somebody, and that's not what they're looking for, you're going to miss the mark. So make sure when you're hired to give a big talk that you know what your audience is expecting from you so that you can be specific in what it is you're giving them. My TEDx speakers taught me, when I already knew this, how much you have to rehearse. You have to do your talk over and over again under mild stress in order to prepare for being in front of an audience. When you're giving a talk to somebody, what you want is for them to hear you. You want them to feel safe so they can take in everything you are sharing with them. So by the end of it, they can be moved. They can adopt your ideas their own. Chris Anderson always says that. Or they can potentially make a change based on your call to action. So if you are not prepared and you are stumbling over your words, we think about that rather than the words you're saying. We start to feel for you, oh, I hope they remember the next line, instead of what you're saying resonates with me and I can't wait to hear the next word. So it's super important that you rehearse over and over and over and over and over and over again, so that when you take the stage, you have a conversation with us and allow us to accept your gift.
Right. So what you're saying is that by rehearsing, there's a distinction between rehearsing and coming across being too scripted. So by rehearsing, you can have that conversation, since you have already kind of developed that muscle memory
Yes.
on how, what you're going to say. So you're not kind of thinking about, at that point, you're not thinking what you're saying. You already have it in your head, so that you can improvise if you have to. And the audience kind of sees that you're talking, you're having a conversation with them. Is that what you mean by when you say keep rehearsing over and over again till you got it down, cold?
Just like a ballerina or a dancer does pliés. They do thousands and thousands of pliés so that they can move off and onto the floor effortlessly. Your pliés as a speaker are to say the words over and over again. And this does not lead to sounding robotic when you're performing. This leads to freedom. So when you have the words so cohesive and so in your bones and so in your DNA that you can go off book or play with the audience, you are going to be so much more approachable as a speaker. And I just want to say that again, rehearsing over and over does not mean you should sound robotic or perfect. Perfection is never good when you're on stage. You want to be a human being. You want to be sounding like you're speaking for the very first time to us who are listening for the first time. So if you rehearse over and over again, it will give you the freedom to be in the moment on stage.
Right. Tricia, you said something about the audience, that you've got to know the audience. How do you know the audience? Because that's a tip you always get, that you've got to know the audience. What are some of the techniques that you recommend in getting to know the audience well, so that you really resonate with them? Because, audiences can change, right, depending on who you're speaking to. Does that mean that you essentially, every speech you give, you have to customize for the audience that you are speaking in front of? And how do you do that?
That's a good question. Some of my podcast guests, Scott McCain, Neen James, and Mark Sanborn, they had really, really good answers to this question. And they all have different ways of doing this. Scott will send, he will ask questions before he goes. He will find out what the audience needs before he gives his talk. Neen James does the same thing. She finds out what it is the audience is asking for so that she can provide that for them. So I think you can either talk to your event planner, find out what it is they want from you so that you can really hit it on the head when you're giving their talk, or some speakers send a survey ahead of time to the audience to find out and to feel out what it is they're looking for. So you have to do your research. You can't go in cold, but you can also create a signature talk or a keynote that can be slightly adjusted based on where you're going. I'm working with a client right now, Mari Carmen Pizarro, who is doing a talk on bridging the gap between gender and culture. And it's all about leadership, but she comes at it through that point of view. So this particular talk could go to women's events. It could also go to huge corporate events. The message can be slightly adjusted as long as the theme maintains the same.
Right. One time I was listening to this famous neuroscientist. Her name is Carmen Simon. I don't know if you ever seen any of her, read her book or seen her speeches. I think she's given several speeches at the HubSpot inbound event. And one of the things that she says that people tend to remember only 10% of any speech that they are listening to. So as a speech director, and again, what she said that was interesting is that they may remember the 10% that you don't want them to remember. So the question is, how do you get the audience to remember that 10% that you want them to remember and take away after the speech has been given?
I think if you have a really clear through line and your speech is written well, you have to be okay with people getting from it what they get from it. And if you are okay with that, then so will we. I think that there's no way we can determine what our audience is going to come away with. We're all different. We're all individual. We all see the world through a different lens. So as long as you know your script is written well, it has a good arc, a solid through line, and your message is clear, then everything is just up to the universe, frankly.
Great. Tricia, I want to move into the performance aspect of speaking, since you're a performer, you work with performers. And I believe that performance, the reason you give a speech, you can write your speech, but at the end, it's the performance that stands out. That's what people see. Just like that famous psychologist, I believe, Morabian said, people see the visual, something like 57% or something. I don't know, the 57, 35, and 8, like that, something like that, right? So the visual is very important, and that means that performance is the main thing that people will see. What can we learn from performers like yourself when we are giving a speech so that the audience gets the message? Like, what are some of the things that performers do that non-performers just simply don't know about?
I love this question. One of the big things performers know how to do is be still. And when you choose to be still, there must be a reason for it. Impact of what you're saying. Giving the audience a moment to take in something that was really hard to listen to. So as a speaker, you can learn from performers in that stillness is equally as important as movement. Confidence translates into safety. So if I'm worried as an audience member that you don't know your lines, or that you are nervous, or that you are having anxiety, I then begin to worry about you as a person rather than listening to what you're saying. And I've been in an audience many times at the theater. I'm watching a show happen and I really start to root for the person who can't seem to get it together, and I miss the entire show. So if you can be confident, it creates an environment where we as an audience feel safe, and then we're going to hear everything you're saying.
Right. But that also ties into what you said before. Because when you're working on a speech, there are so many aspects which we'll cover when we get to the season 5 and what you're doing. But what I found when I work with people is that it just gets overwhelming after a while, because many times they have a lot of ideas, then they have to have a kind of a message that they want to convey. And then when you get to performance, they just get overwhelmed, like, oh my God, now I have to focus on the performance. How do you simplify it? Because, one of the things I noticed when people mention acting background, immediately what goes to my mind is, I'm not an actor. I can't do what they do. They've been training all their lives, doing that. They know how to take a script and make magic happen. But as a speaker, I'm just struggling with trying to get my thoughts together to have a message. And now all of a sudden I have to learn a new skill that I'm just not capable of doing while the stakes are high. So what do you do to calm people down and saying, listen, you don't need to know, you can do it too? How do you get through to people like that?
The first thing we talk about is how to put yourself in an environment that's very similar to sitting across from your friend over dinner. So if you can imagine that, and you begin to give me your talk and give me your speech and have that conversation with me like we're just two friends having dinner, it takes away the I'm not an actor. And then what you want to do is start performing your talk over and over again and ask for feedback. And this is what's scary, because now you're going to get people saying, you're swaying, you're fidgeting, you're smacking your lips. And that's not what you want to hear as a speaker. You want to hear that you're perfectly poised, you never stumbled over one word, and my life has been changed forever because of what you've said. That doesn't happen right away. So give yourself the opportunity to practice that. And you don't have to be an actor. You don't have to be a performer. You have to be somebody who has a very important message and is willing to do the work to learn how to stand still, to learn how to breathe so that you can support your voice, and to learn how to take enough water before the beginning of your talk so that your dry mouth doesn't kick in and you're smacking your lips the entire time. That all takes practice. So if you give yourself the gift of time, you will become a better speaker.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah. And another thing that I do, and I'm sure this is something you would recommend, is nowadays, like, we have this camera right here. I tend to practice a lot in front of camera. Now, sometimes camera is kind of hard because you can't really move freely. And I always find that speaking in front of people a lot easier than speaking in front of camera, because like you said, you have to just be right in front of the camera, and there's no feedback you get from a camera, but at least you get an idea. You got to kind of just pretend that there is an audience. And that's what I tend to recommend to a lot of the people that I work with. Get in front of the camera. You got an iPhone, device like that, and see what you sound like, what you look like, and then get a feedback. And that's how you incrementally improve.
That's great advice. And also, when you're doing it in front of the camera, make sure that you're seeing the audience over here, and then maybe the person up here, the guy in the balcony, somebody who's here. So change your focus so it looks like you're actually giving a talk on stage.
Right, right. I want to cover one aspect of performance, and this is something that one of your guests that you had interviewed, Scott McKain, and he wrote a book. I think it's an excellent book, All Business is Show Business, where he says that you have to entertain today. And it makes a lot of sense to get your message across. So now you're adding another component into a speech that a lot of people who already have fear, and even people who are experts, it's one of those things you have to calibrate. Either they'll overdo it or they'll not do it at all. Based on your background, how important is, because without entertainment, it's very hard for audience to pay attention to you. How do you do it, and at what point you can be going overboard where people will not seriously take your message? I mean, there's that fine line, and I wanted to kind of get your opinion on that you do need to entertain, and that's what Scott McKain says, and he's a great speaker. What is your view on that?
Scott McKain is awesome. He's a fantastic speaker, and he's a really fun guy. His energy and pace is entertaining. That's natural for him. When he gets on stage, he eats you for dinner and he has a good time while he's doing it. Neen James is the same. She wants to have fun. That's her goal, to not only share information, but to have fun while she's doing it. So I think you have to know who you are, know what kind of talk you're giving, and then identify whether or not you want to add the element of entertainment. I had several speakers at TEDxLincolnSquare who were very difficult subject matter. One talked about child's rights. She's the director of Children's Rights Watch. And another woman talked about mental illness and how we need to start giving our kids information about mental illness much younger so that they're prepared. These are very difficult topics. They should not be entertaining. But my audience needed a break in between them So I put one in the first act and the other in the second act. And between the acts, I had a comedian come on and make us laugh. So there is an element of entertainment that you should consider within an event, within an evening of speeches. But if your talk is a serious topic, you don't want it to be entertaining. So I think you have to determine when the entertainment portion happens within the event and specific to each talk.
Right. And there again, what you said is right on the spot, but also you need to understand the audience. Some audience are just, and what I found is that when you try to be entertaining, it usually fails.
If you, yes, you shouldn't really try to do anything. You should just be.
Right.
If possible.
Right. I want to move to the season 5 of your podcast, and I've had the opportunity to listen. And for those who are watching it, Tricia's doing an excellent job in directing a speech. It takes, I believe you've taken 4 clients of yours and helped them through the whole. I'll have you kind of tell us your process, since I've already seen the first 2 episodes. Can you kind of talk about the season 5 and the process that you're going through with the speakers? And is that the process you use when you're personally directing people one-on-one?
Sure. So season 5 of the Big Talk is called Journey to the Stage. And I had an open application process for speakers who wanted to go on this journey with me, where I helped them identify, craft, and deliver a life-changing talk. So I had all these amazing people apply, and I chose 4 speakers, very different ideas, very different levels. And within 5 episodes, they each get 5 episodes. I work with them on identifying, qualifying their ideas. Then we work on writing. Then I give them feedback on their script. Then they rewrite. I teach them what an opening and a closing is, and that's different than an introduction and a conclusion. And we do this all on air. And then the final episode is in real-time direction. So I have them go through their script, and it's not memorized, but I have them go through their script and I give them direction about how they're saying, what they're saying, why they're saying. And it's been awesome. I've recorded everybody's episodes. Everything is in the can through September 25th. Our first guest is Kimay Caldwell, and it's really amazing. And then we've got James Lucas and Cheryl Marks Young and Susie Carpenter. And what I loved about this experience, Jay, was my process is the same. I find that it works very well to get to the goal, which is creating a life-changing talk. But within my process, I allow all of my speakers to have their own process. And these 4 speakers definitely have their own process within mine. And it is so fun to listen to them go through this journey, go on this journey to the stage with me. I hope that you'll keep listening because it's really cool.
If an entrepreneur comes to you and says, Tricia, I have to go and give pitches to get funding, at that point, there is something they have to get at the end of their speech where either they're going to get funded or they're not going to get funded. How would you work with that individual? Because he's got a specific need now where, his business depends on his or her ability to secure funding for her business. Would that be any different? Would you work with that person any different than the people that you work with this concept of, gifting?
Absolutely. I like to inspire instead of pitch. So I would teach this writer, this speaker, how to inspire organically new business, how to inspire the new clients to sign up rather than pitching them. Nobody wants to be sold to, but if you can inspire them to sign up for your online course, if you can inspire them to sign up to work with you for 6 months based on what it is you're sharing, that is what I do. I inspire people to create organically new business driven straight to them.
Right. One last question before we move to the final few questions. And this one always gets me because I often get people who want me to help them with their speech, but the problem is they don't give me a lot of time. Have you run into that situation? And how can you help somebody who comes to you and says, Tricia, I need help. I heard you've done this podcast, the Big Talk podcast, and you know a lot about public speaking. I need to give a speech in, let's say, less than a week. Can you help me? But I'm not sure if I got that kind of time that you're asking me to put in. What do you do about that? How do you help that person?
The first thing I do is look at their script. I go right to the text and I edit, and I make sure that they are saying what they need to say clearly, and anything that I trim the fat. I get rid of anything that is superfluous so that they are getting straight to the point and they can start to work on it. They can start to rehearse it. So I think the best thing to do is you have to be a fierce editor. You have to cut everything and make sure that what you're saying is succinct and to the point.
Excellent. All right, Tricia, we're going to wrap this up with a few final few questions. One thing that I'm coming out with hopefully soon, I'm self-publishing a book and it's titled Winning Speech Moments. By this book, what I'm saying is that in any speech, you got to create those winning speech moments that captures people's attention, that they'll remember after the speech is done. When you are directing or coaching people, what are the winning speech moments you try to inject into their speech, saying that these are the things that the people must remember after your speech is over? How do you create the winning speech moments with your clients?
I never try to create the winning speech moments. I think that's the first thing. I never try to do that. I have to get out of the way of the speaker and the speech. I have to let it happen. I have to let it happen in front of me. But what I can do is actively listen. So when the speaker is saying things like, I have a dream, Martin Luther King, or it's we the people, not we the white male citizens, Susan B. Anthony. If I can get out of the way, the things like good morning, what Maya Angelou said in the inauguration speech, those things will happen. And then I can capture that lightning in a bottle and gently give it back to the speaker as their own. So my job is to listen and to grab them when they happen. I never want to create a winning speech moment or force a winning speech moment or impose my winning speech moment. It will happen if we stay open to each other in the room and I stay actively listening and you trust me to say everything that's in your mind and in your heart.
Excellent. The question I have is, what are some of movies, books, or even if you've seen a Broadway play that has influenced your thinking?
I really love the book called Grit to Great, and it's by Linda Kaplan Thaler and Robin Koval. And what I love about this is it really does make a difference when you work hard. So people who say it's just luck, no, if you stay on course, if you stay focused, if you roll up your sleeves and do the work, it will pay off. And I love this book. Another film that just inspired me, and it blew my mind, frankly, is called Baby Driver. And it's written and directed by Edgar Wright. This film is so beautiful because as a dancer, I see everything in movement. He was able to write a film that is highly choreographed in pedestrian movement. So every bit of musicality, it's not kickball change. This is not dance moves, but the way he wrote it and directed it, it's fluid and it's physical and it tells the story through movement. And I love it. It's an amazing film.
And that was called Baby Driver?
Baby Driver.
And it's been out for some time now?
Yeah, it's probably still out.
Oh, excellent. I'll have to check it. I do, by the way, have that book, Grit to Great.
Isn't it awesome?
Well, I have to read it again. A lot of times what I do is when I get the book, I skim through it and then I mark down, I'm an ebook person. I'll highlight certain sections and then I'll go back. I do multiple passes through books. So I've done one pass. I need to go through a second pass. Now that you mention it, I will do that. Tricia, since you're in public speaking, who are some of the speakers that today that you see out there that you consider them as outstanding speakers that you tend to learn a lot from by watching them give speeches? Two
of my favorite speakers are Sarah Jones and Michelle Obama. Sarah Jones is a performance artist. She's done one-woman shows forever. I saw her first one-woman show down at the New York Poet Society on 3rd Street between B and C in New York City in 1991. And she has continued to do one-woman shows, and she's been on the TED stage multiple times. She is a genius, and she has a deep desire to make a difference in the world. And then you've got Michelle Obama, who is one of the best speakers I've ever seen. And that's because she understands the impact of what she's saying. She knows how to connect with her audience, and she's extremely comfortable and confident. She's unwavering in her confidence. She doesn't care about being judged. And I think that is another thing that makes an awesome speaker. You have to let go of caring about whether people are going to judge you, because you can count on it. They're going to judge you. Somebody in the audience is going to have something to say about you, but it doesn't matter because your message is worth it.
And that's what makes her a great speaker, because she's not afraid to be judged. Because if everybody likes you, that means you probably didn't give a great speech. You just spoke to the choir, right? So, and you know, after she speaks, you'll have some people, they'll just love her speech, and some people will just can't stand it. And that's the way a speech should be. It should be right there, where half the people, well, 1/3 of the people will love you for it, 1/3 will hate you, and 1/3 won't care. Tricia, last question before we get to the finishing part of the show. What is the last thing that you say to yourself and to any speaker who's about to go on the stage to give their speech in front of an audience?
I always ask my speakers to plant both feet solidly into the floor, take a breath, receive the gift from the audience before you give them your gift.
Excellent. Tricia, any final thoughts, anything that you want to add that that I may have asked that you want to, you know, put some finishing touches on?
I'd love to know more about your book. That sounds amazing. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, and in fact, I will send you a copy as soon as I just found out that the person who is designing it broke his leg.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, right. So, so I just said, listen, since I've been waiting already, I can wait. But the book has already been edited, and it's my first book, so we'll see how it goes. And I'll certainly be looking for some, you know, feedback from people. And at some point, you know, I've been working on it for quite some time, and at some point you just got to say, okay, enough is enough. I got to ship it at this point, you know, otherwise it's one of those projects that never ends. And you know how that works in show business. At some point you can't worry about trying to make it perfect, otherwise you'll never get it done. And sometimes you need that audience out there. And I said, look, if the audience comments on it, I'll make it better next time. And nowadays, since I'm self-publishing it, you can easily do that. But I'm learning a lot, by the way. I've learned that writing a book is hard. People make it sound like it's easy, because there are like 5 stages of writing. Writing is one part of it. Then comes the editing part, working with an editor. That's a completely new thing for me. Then comes the publishing part, since I'm self-publishing. There are a lot of little things. Then comes even the harder part. It gets harder at each point, the marketing part. And then the ultimate, can you actually even make money from that? So,
right. It sounds like a little bit of the process of writing a speech. You want to write the speech, rehearse the speech, perform the speech, and then figure out who to sell the speech to, how to get on those stages.
Right, exactly. So Tricia, let me thank you for your generosity coming on the show and providing your deep insight from your vast experience. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot from you, and let me also acknowledge you for all the outstanding work you do with your podcast, and also as a volunteer mentoring cancer patients in writing their speeches so that they can, you know, go through their treatment and recovery, which you do at Sloan Kettering, and also empower.
Let me just clarify that, Jay. The Visible Ink program, which is incredible. I volunteer for them, but I'm not a writing mentor. I actually choreograph the shows. So it's a little bit different, but it's an incredible program.
Right. And also you empower, work with young women to empower them to share their stories. So I want to acknowledge you for that. And I learn a lot from the work that you've done with this, the Big Talk. And I'm going to watch many of the speeches from TEDx Lincoln Square, and I hope to attend the next one in New York, since
I
I'm in
would
New
love
Jersey.
that. Yes, please do. I would love that.
Right. So again, I like that philosophy of life you have. Say, have a bias for yes, and because of that, I got the opportunity to talk to you. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking.
Hey, it's me again. I ended the broadcast a little too quickly. I didn't give Tricia a chance to tell you how you can get to know more about her and what she's currently working on. So I'll just tell you, and then I'll display it after I'm done. If you want to get hold of Tricia regarding her podcast, the place to go to is obvious on iTunes, and the podcast is called The Big Talk. Or you can go to the website, thebigtalknyc.com. If you want to follow her on Twitter, it's at your big talk, at your big talk. On Facebook, it's The Big Talk with Tricia Brouk. That's The Big Talk with Tricia Brouk. As far as what she's currently working on, we discussed the TEDx Lincoln Square event that she organized last year. Well, she's busy working on the next one. And that one you can get more information at TEDx Lincoln Square. And the theme of this one is Looking Beyond. And it's going to take place in New York City on March 27th. So keep an eye on that. If you're in the New York City area, definitely attend it. I'm going to try to get my ticket. And she said that the tickets are going to go on sale sometime in September. So definitely check the website TEDx Lincoln Square and get these tickets early, because from what I heard, they go very quickly. And it'll be a great event. I think what she told me was it's going to be from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. But again, it may change. But keep an eye on it at the website TEDx Lincoln Square. She's also currently directing a new web series titled Sid and Mike. And she's writing a theater piece about mothers and daughters. So as you can see, there's a lot of things that she's currently working on, and stay tuned regarding when these things are going to be released and available. The last thing is, if you have been following our podcast from episode 82, and there will be 16 of these, where she takes individuals and helps them craft their stories so they can share with others. And it's amazing what she's doing in these podcasts. I'm learning a lot from them. But if you're interested, you should go get her free ebook at The Big Talk, theartofthebigtalk.com, theartofthebigtalk.com, and you can apply and get chosen. Now, one thing I got to tell you is there are a lot of people who apply to this, so I'm not going to make it sound like that just because you apply, you're going to get selected. She gets lots of requests, and she can only pick a handful of people where she can actually direct their speech, from brainstorming to coming up with a big idea to writing a script and then coming up with a performance. But if you can get in, you'll learn a lot. I mean, I'm learning a lot just by listening to this podcast. So there's a lot of stuff that Tricia's doing, and I will have all this information coming up so that you can stop the video and jot down all the information. Thank you.